What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. Just caught Batman Ninja on Amazon. It was released today. Actually, two versions of the movie were released today, one of which is dubbed in English and one of which is dubbed in Japanese. Apart from the intellectual property, this is largely a Japanese production. The filmmaker is Junpei Mizusaki, if I'm saying his name correctly, with a lot of character design by Takashi Okazaki, who people might remember from his work on Afro Samurai. And at the risk of overselling the movie, and I don't want to raise people's expectations too high, but I think this is the most entertaining Batman movie since 2008's The Dark Knight. Like a lot of people out there, I absolutely love DC movies. However, I have found them to be inconsistent in their level of quality. At times, they have been grim to the point of self-parody, but Batman Ninja is a beautiful reminder of just how fun and exciting and original the world of DC Comics can be. For people who've been reading comics for a very long time, we're kind of living in a golden age when it comes to cinematic depictions of these characters. I mean, obviously, Avengers Infinity War comes out in a couple days, but one of the things that I've noticed is that at a time where we have so many movies like Infinity War or Deadpool 2 coming out on a regular basis, it makes some of the traditional comics or some of the animated straight-to-video movies based on these characters sometimes seem like they're struggling to maintain their relevance. I still buy comics every single Wednesday. I absolutely love the format. I still watch a lot of animated movies featuring superheroes, but I think Batman Ninja does a great job of showing the way for superhero adaptations that are not going to be on the big screen with these giant mega budgets. Animation and comics are where superheroes need to get weird and they need to get creative. I feel like with comic books, they're a perfect idea factory, like a laboratory for new concepts, new characters, and the characters and ideas that gain a lot of popularity can obviously then be adapted to these big giant movies where a lot of money's on the line. But what's awesome about Batman Ninja is that it takes so much that is familiar about the Batman universe and gives it a very new, fresh coat of paint. On one hand, you've got the very familiar faces from the Bat family, including obviously Batman, as well as Robin, as well as Red Robin, the Red Hood, and Nightwing, and Catwoman. And in terms of villains, you got Joker, Harley Quinn, Deathstroke, Two-Face, Penguin, a lot of the familiar rogues gallery. But where the story begins to veer away from your typical Batman adventure stories, that Gorilla Grodd has invented a time machine. At the beginning of the movie, there's an accident. Everybody gets hurled centuries back in time to ancient Japan. They all arrive at different points, Batman arriving the latest. So by the time Batman finds himself in medieval Japan, all of his enemies and allies are very firmly entrenched in their new lives, because this is a period of Japan that is characterized by a lot of feudal warfare. It's basically a lot of small factions and states perpetually at war with one another, and the Joker has emerged as a mayor player known as the Demon King. And that's about all I can say without going into major spoiler territory. So before I get into some specifics about what I liked and disliked, I'll just say if you are a fan of DC Comics, Batman Ninja is absolutely 100% required viewing. If you like superhero movies and or Japanese animation, 100% required viewing. This movie gets genuinely strange as it progresses, so it's not going to be for everybody. If people want their superheroes to be a little bit more mainstream, Batman Ninja is most certainly not that. But on the whole, I would say I was left slack-jawed by the film's originality, its attention to detail, and just how much fun it was to watch. So whoever over at Warner Brothers Animation gave the green light to Batman Ninja, more of this please. In any case, last spoiler warning, let's talk about some specifics. So right from the get-go, what I loved most about this movie was the character design. They take things that are very familiar and just add little twists to make them a little bit more Japanese. Like perfect example would be Catwoman. Back in time, when Bruce first encounters her, she's dressed in traditional Japanese garb, but is using a little cat puppet with which to communicate. It's just insanely cool. But once she finally gets geared up as Catwoman, it's not her traditional Catwoman costume. Like her mask is actually like an actual like scarf that's tied off. It's just little details that make it seem like her costume is like a hybrid of technology from the future, as well as things that she's picked up piecemeal in the past. And then there's just some great humor stuff, like when Bruce Wayne goes undercover as a missionary, he has the shaved top of the head, because at this time there are a lot of Christian missionaries in Japan. But of course, in his bald spot, he tattoos a giant bat symbol. Obviously, he's not trying too hard to remain that undercover if any of his enemies were to see him. And those little dashes of humor really go a long way. For people who love the character of Batman, they know that he doesn't always have to be completely grim and growling. Back in the late 80s with Justice League International, with Giffen, McGuire, and DeMatteis, with their handling of the book, Batman was often hysterical, even though he never broke character as Batman as we understand him. But here there's a great bit when he first arrives and he looks up to the sky and he puts up his grappling hook and he's looking around for something to fire off to. But this is medieval Japan. There are no tall buildings, so Batman is grounded. And these lighthearted details just make the movie so much damn fun to watch. And one thing this movie very carefully avoids is a situation that I've noticed in the past where sometimes when you have these Japanese-American hybrids, you have a situation where the American production company is trying to pull the Japanese animation into the American mainstream and make it less Japanese. Here you kind of have the reverse. You have the Japanese film culture pulling these characters into their world and making them very Japanese. One of the things I love most about this was when you get these introductions of the various characters in the past, and you get these great like title screens or like freeze frame character intros, and they're just so insanely dramatic and cool. And oftentimes the still drawings in this movie are even more exciting and dynamic than the actual animation. I mean, case in point was the introduction of Bane, when we see him as a sumo wrestler but still with the Bane mask, and the effect was so dramatic and so exciting. I almost wish DC Comics would permanently find a way to transform Bane into a sumo wrestler. And while Batman is very clearly and very obviously the star of the story, his incredible supporting cast of characters all get little moments of shine. It's a great bit where Harley Quinn just absolutely made me crack up. Tara Strong's had a lot of practice as Harley Quinn at this point, but there's this great bit where the Joker and Harley Quinn are about to defeat Batman, when suddenly all these reinforcements arrive, first in the form of bats, but then in the form of all these ninjas with little Batman masks, and Harley just says, "What? Ninja Batman?" And just the way she delivers it, I just started cackling wildly. But as it turns out, Nightwing, Red Robin, Robin, and the Red Hood, they've been in the past a lot longer than Batman, and they've been going through ninja training, and they've been finding allies. And as it turns out, there's a prophecy about Batman coming back and defeating a great evil. So not only does Batman get his own private ninja army, we even get a really cool training sequence as Batman starts to pick up some new skills. And we get this really interesting clash of technology, because while Gorilla Grodd and all the various villains are employing futuristic technology in the past, Batman increasingly over time starts relying more and more on the ninja weaponry. But it's not all traditional, because this movie reaches a giant crescendo, and this crescendo, or this climax, will probably delight as many people as it pushes away, because while the initial fight scenes in the past are incredibly grounded, mostly dealing with swords and really interesting martial arts choreography, we do get a giant robot battle in this, where basically all the major villains and all their castles rise up like robots, and they have a big giant battle, and then eventually they all form together into even one larger one. And in response, we get millions of monkeys under Gorilla Grodd's control that turn into a giant monkey. And there's this beautiful little shot of Robin playing a flute with his monkey sidekick handling the fingerings. It's not something you're going to see in the DC extended live action universe. And for my own taste, I feel like some of this battle scene, some of the characters kind of get lost in the exchange. It gets so big and so crazy that you almost get diminishing returns as opposed to increased states of awe. However, there was one beautiful moment where Batman, through bats, forms his own giant Batman, and it's the perfect character design from Detective Comics number 27 from way back in 1939. So that was a great little tip of the hat to the great Batman stories of the past. The movie just gets completely insane, because you have 1939 Batman fighting a giant robot with millions of monkeys crawling all over him, spilling over onto the enemy and ripping it apart. I mean, this is not like any Batman story you've ever seen before. But if this giant robot battle loses some people, they'll definitely come back for the official climax, where all the various characters pair off for some one-on-one combat. And the dialogue gets pretty hardcore. At one point, Catwoman says, "Time for some girl-on-girl action," before she starts fighting with Harley, and Harley's like licking her face. I mean, this is definitely taking one step into slightly more mature territory. But I love how we have like Red Hood versus Deathstroke and Robin versus Poison Ivy. And of course, we have an awesome duel between Batman and the Joker, mano a mano. And Joker, he's pretty goddamn badass with the sword in this, so that combat was insanely satisfying to watch. But of course, all ends well. Everybody returns to their proper time. But I love how we see a little bit of this Japanese culture being carried back into the present when Batman's heading off to a dinner party at the very end. He's in a horse-drawn carriage with like a little Japanese hut, and inside we can see him on his knees having a Japanese tea ceremony. So overall, I was very satisfied by the experience. I just love seeing a fresh perspective or some fresh blood being injected into these characters. Batman's nearly an 80-year-old character. You need fresh ideas, fresh takes, if he's going to remain the enduring pop culture icon that we know and love for many more years to come. So in a week that's already jam-packed with all sorts of insanely cool stuff like Westworld and Infinity War, it was a delight to have this little movie sneaking under the radar. Whether you're watching in English or in Japanese, I guarantee you're going to have an absolute blast. And I just hope that the people at Warner Brothers Animation give us more insanely creative, wild, unbridled superhero movies like this in the future. But I hope you enjoyed my review, reaction, and recap. If you want to talk more, you can find me on Twitter at Colbrax, or just leave a comment in the comments below, and I'll be back at y'all later tonight or tomorrow to review the latest episode of Legion. Onwards and upwards.